CEO of the Royal Bank of Scotland. Vandals crashed the windows, broke the windows on the home, also on the back window of the Mercedes parked in the driveway. Fred Goodwin, very controversial figure. He resigned in disgrace, refused to give back his $1.2 million annual pension. And some folks in the local newspaper are claiming that they are a group called Bank Bosses Are Criminals, and they took responsibility for it. But now he's got police protection as a result. It's tough in the executive suites, or in the former executive suites, so to speak.
Of course, we have our own hot-button issue here in the United States with the AIG bonuses. Many executives choosing to give them back Sunday and Monday night. And in this morning's New York Times, on the op-ed page, a dramatic letter written by a now former, well, I guess he's still there, but he's going to be resigning. Jake DeSantis is his name in the financial products division there. And for me, gang, it's a letter he wrote to Ed Liddy, the chairman and CEO of AIG. For me, the heart of it is this paragraph. You're aware that most of the employees of your financial products unit had nothing to do with the large losses. I'm disappointed and frustrated over your lack of support for us, he's writing to Mr. Liddy. I and many others in the unit feel betrayed that you failed to stand up for us in the face of untrue, unfair accusations from certain members of Congress last Wednesday and from the press over our retention payments, and that you didn't defend us against the baseless, reckless comments made by the attorneys general of New York and of Connecticut. And it goes on from there. I mean, that's just one paragraph out of a long letter. This is, sort of puts a face on these bonuses that these people who have been vilified publicly.
It sure does, and it left me torn. I was far, far away in Key West last week when this controversy broke, and the first reaction is that is outrageous to give bonuses to the very unit that brought the entire company down. That's just wrong. Now a guy writes, he says, I'm in that unit, but I didn't do the bad trades. I was doing other stuff that was making $100 million over a couple of years, and suddenly it adds some shades of gray there.
We should point out Mr. DeSantis was earning $1 a year.
Right.
Pending whatever his bonus would be, which in this case was about $725,000.
Yeah, but there's a fundamental problem with the argument, which is that these guys get bonuses not solely based on their own performance, but based on the performance of the company. And one, the company would be bankrupt without the government help. But in good times, they floated highly. Their tide was lifted because or their boat was lifted because the tide was high. So they got better bonuses in the past, not solely based on their own performance.
The money is one thing, but we just showed you the violence against the former CEO of the Royal Bank of Scotland. You can feel all you want about what he did or didn't do, but what we've ended up with is this mob mentality where some people are being threatened physically as a result of this situation, when Ed Liddy isn't clear and says, you know what, some of those individuals actually didn't do any of that bad stuff. He never made that clear when he was testifying.
Nobody condones violence like that, but the reality is that we had an economy in the U.S. especially of vast inequality. And what happens in the time of recession is that this anger and this resentment comes to the fore, and you have to deal with it. But the problem was the fundamental putting the money in without any conditions in the first place. That was the original sin of the
How do you feel about New York Attorney General Cuomo saying, if you give back the money, we won't release your name. If you don't give back the money, maybe we won't release your name.
Well, this gentleman says...
I think, quote, naming names would be wrong, but I think that a threat to renegotiate is perfectly appropriate. It should have come earlier in the process, but I think you negotiate with a little bit of carrot and a little bit of stick.
Well, listen to this. Well, what does Andrew Cuomo and the state of New York have to do with that issue? They got federal taxpayer money, AIG, in that bailout, not state money. Why is it his business at all unless he's running for governor?
Well, I agree that it should have been Geithner in the first place. I agree that this whole TARP plan has been misbegotten. But if Cuomo can get results through negotiation, why not? This is in the taxpayers' interest. Now, of course, you're sympathetic to an individual guy who says that I'm being browbeaten, I'm being blamed for this.
He's working 14 hours a day for $1 a year.
For $1 a year.
And
he also says the only motivation that anyone at AIG Financial Products now has to stay is fear. Mr. Cuomo has threatened to name and shame, and his counterpart in Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, has made similar threats, even though attorneys general are supposed to stand for due process and conduct trials in courts and not in the press. If the only motivation that these people have to stay in AIG is fear, that's a big problem. He also makes the point that a number of the people that got the company into that particular situation are no longer there.
And they left and kept their money. I wish there were a way we could claw some of that back.
Yeah.
This is not a perfectly just solution to this problem, but the problem is that these guys blew up and almost took the financial system down with them, and the government saved them. And if they had been in bankruptcy, there would be no bonuses.
Right. But we don't have bankruptcy.
Does it also go to the point, the thought was, and we've had these discussions on our particular panels many times, Donnie Deutsch saying, where are these guys going to go? You know, don't bonus them. They're not going to go anyplace. Their name has been tarred and feathered, and obviously a number of these guys have gone other places, and we've heard from sources that a number of these people have found very profitable employment elsewhere.
Some of them, but of course the financial sector is contracting, and the issue is that these guys are sort of threatening to go and trade against AIG as a counterparty. So they are sort of acting like blackmailing us.
Yeah.
And
your magazine's ad pages are down sharply, like all magazines in this downturn, right?
Certainly true.
Would you work for $1 a year and the promise of a bonus, and then they renege on?
Well, no, I wouldn't work for $1 a year, but I would, if my magazine closes, I hope to God, where some wood, that it doesn't, I'll have to go find another job. I mean, there's 650,000 people are being thrown out of work every month in this economy. Lots of people are suffering, and people are suffering with much more.
TV, don't call him.
Yeah.
I've got to turn off my cell phone.
Might be the nanny calling to making sure you're coming home on time. By the way, we do encourage you to read the letter by Mr. DeSantis in today's New York Times. You can read on their website, NewYorkTimes.com.
And tell us what you think on Twitter.
Sure, why not? We have the CEO of Twitter coming on. That's why we're doing this today, as a matter of fact. Straight ahead.
We're on the upside on the Dow, but off of our best levels. We were up about 135 points. We're still up 96 points on the trading session. Credit markets looking a little bit better these days. What about these signs of hope? Will it extend to private equity? Will there be a PE comeback? We'll talk about that.